All right. Well. Good morning, everyone. We are SOTU, and this is SOTUesday for June the 28th, 2016. And as we alluded to last week, there were great changes at play in the dynamics of your world, and certainly so, that has come to pass in many ways. And it is our purpose today to perhaps speak to the dynamics that are occurring so that you might be able to maintain a certain dynamic of perspective within the dynamics of great change that are occurring in your world right now. Now, of course, it has been suggested to all of you that you maintain the dynamics of your center, that you ride your so called surfboard through the chaos of the reality that is presenting itself. But there is also another dynamic to be understood, that there are a great many forces, as evidenced by the dynamics of the Brexit and the Bremain, and we only use that as a dynamic of an example for the opportunities that are presented to you within that dynamic. And we would suggest to you that ultimately any of you that takes one side or the other is being played. And the dynamic of any duality that is thrust upon you seemingly from the outside is a dynamic of manipulation that is seeking to keep you from becoming the powerful and truly empowered species that you are always intended to be. And so that we would suggest to you within the dynamic of this chaos, as you are being offered these opportunities to do a them and an us, to do a better than, less than, to do a dynamic of I am better because of this, or I am less because of that each of these dynamics are intended to disempower you. And that if you begin to look at the polarities of energy that are being offered to you, those of you, for example, if we were to make an assessment, if we were to counsel someone that was concerned about the dynamic of whether Britain actually left the dynamic of the European Union or not, to Brexit or Bremain, and we would suggest that if you look at that, this is two sides of a paradoxical situation. That in fact there are truth and there are lies in both dynamics. And in order to make a true assessment of the dynamic, you must examine the truth and the lies in both polarities. When one understands that, and we realize that it's not as simple as black and white, it is not the instant gratification that so many of you look for in your lives, that it requires some thinking, it requires some reasoning, it requires some assessment, it requires some utilization of the brain, of the mind within the dynamic of the heart. For is that not the ultimate polarity that most of you are being offered in these dynamics? A dynamic of your brain tells you one thing, your heart tells you something else, and this causes a dynamic of conflict that it seems that energies from the outside are playing with in order to exacerbate your situations. But we would suggest to you, if you simply refuse to play, if you put yourself in a sort of understanding place, a place of objectivity where you take nothing carte blanche anymore, and that includes the information that we give you, that you assess the dynamic of almost everything. That so much of what you are presented in your world these days, either through your media or through the dynamics of your personal relationships with others, only seeks to reinforce the dynamic of status quo, only seeks to, what shall we say, restore your normalcy bias. And those of you that don't know what that means, we would suggest that you look it up. For it is your normalcy bias that will lead many of you to, what shall we say, coming in conflict with the dynamic of your soul's journey so that it leads to a situation where you are forced to move rather than you move voluntarily. And that is what is occurring in your world right now, dear ones. There is a movement of soul, there is a movement of growth, there is a divine movement that each and every one of you has being asked, especially since the dynamic of the year 2000, in the ensuing 16 years that have occurred since the change of the millennium, we would suggest to you that your world has changed dramatically. And so if you were being asked the question in 2000, in 2001, in 2004, in 2007, 2008, even up till today, how loudly do you think the soul of the species, how loudly do you think your soul is speaking to you in ways that are asking so many of you who it is that you are going to be? Who will you be? Now, we wish to tell you that the powers that be expect that you are going to revolt against each other, that the Trumps are going to go against the Bernieites. We don't know what to call them, but we would call them that. We would suggest to you that they think that the rich are going to go against the poor, that people are going to fight with each other, and the populations of your, what shall we say, your countries are going to be decimated through the dynamics of inner conflict. And we would suggest to you the best way to counter that dynamic is to do exactly the opposite. Because it is within humanity's basic nature to be a community being, to join together in small groups, in large groups, in order to effect change, in order to create what you wish, in order to create. But you have been taught so often that it is the rugged individual that is the creator. Well, we would suggest to you that it is the group that is the creator. It is the collective mind. And when one takes responsibility for that dynamic, when one begins to express one's true nature, when one reaches out to others in the face of crisis rather than going into isolation, when one begins to work with others in order to do everything from survive to effect change, one begins to be more and more empowered. The old expression that there is safety in numbers is absolutely correct. So understand, please, dear ones, so understand that as others are seeking to divide you, it is time to begin to find ways, to find that common ground that we speak of, to be able to work together, to be able to play together, to be able to respond to the chaos, to the changes, together. We love you all so very, very much. We are SOTU, and this is SOTUesday for June the 28th, 2016. And so until the next time, Tracy, we love you. Sending you peace, sending you happiness, sending you joy.